Jack, the Rays have just as good a shot at the AL East crown as the Blue Jays and the Yankees. Overreaction or not?
I'm going to say not an overreaction. And I think the reason I'm going with not is because it really hurt me to drop the Rays in my preseason predictions. I'm a guy that's been wanting the Rays to win something substantial for a long time. I always like to see the Rays do well because they're a smaller market team. They don't always have the same type of money dropped on players as a lot of other teams. And so I like to see it. I like to see it when they do well. But with the Guardians wildcard series last year, I just couldn't bring myself to put them in the playoffs again. But I do want to make up for that and kind of make up for what I said about them preseason by saying that I believe this is not an overreaction. I do seriously think that they have a shot at the division, even though I didn't think that they did coming into the year. And I think the reason that I'm thinking that is because of what I've seen from the offense so far. And I know that the competition has not been the greatest. They've played some poor teams on the field, but they still haven't lost a game. They've scored the most runs in the league. They've allowed the second fewest runs in the league. And if there was a team that I was going to be wrong about coming into the year, I agreed with you that it was probably going to be the Rays because they prove people wrong all the time. Finally, when I jump over to the other side and I start doubting the Rays, they start out like this 6-0 with everyone clicking on all cylinders. So I'm going to say not an overreaction. I really do think that the Rays will compete again for the playoffs and potentially the division.
I'm going to say this is an overreaction, and that's not to say that they have no chance. I think there's a chance, but to say just as good a shot is an overreaction. Like you said, they're just taking care of what they need to take care of. So that's good for them. They're doing what they need to do. They playing the Tigers and Nationals the first two series of the year. They sweep them both, and now they're playing the A's, and then they got that series with the A's starts today, and then they play the Red Sox as the next series. It's a little bit of a cakewalk to start the year, and so props to them for taking care of what they need to take care of, and kind of this is where you want to be at. If you drop a couple, like it's baseball, you can drop anything, and you're 4-2 instead of 6-0. That 6-0 is a much better start than 4-2. But for the playing teams like the Tigers and the Nationals, I'm gonna stick with what my opinion was preseason, and it's just my opinion's not changed. And I still like I said in the preview though, I think there's still be in the thick of things for that wild card spot. I was maybe trying to be a little bit different. Going for them not being in the playoffs. I feel like people still have them in the playoffs, and I think if I remember correctly, they were my first team out. So I think they could still make the playoffs. I said that before, but I think just as good a shot as winning the division as the Blue Jays and the Yankees. I think those are going to be two teams that are up near 100 wins in the season, and I just don't see that from the Rays this year. I don't see three teams being around there, so I think more than them just playing better than what we thought would have to go right for them to win the division. It would also have to be the Blue Jays and Yankees kind of underperforming. They kind of drop games from teams they should win, like the Rays aren't doing. So that's what it could come down to is, you see a series where you win 2 of 3, and the Rays are sweeping those series against the same teams. That could come down to be a difference. It's only one game at a time, but those add up if you continue to do that. So I think more than them just playing well would have to go right for them to win this division. But I think there's a chance, like I said, but not just as good of a shot. That's an overreaction.
I think that we both kind of thought that they'd be a middling kind of a team where they'd be sitting around that 500 level, maybe a little bit above, but the way that they've played so far, I know that the competition is not great, but there is something to be said about not dropping a single game. Like even good teams have lost games to bad teams, and we're going to talk about some of those teams later on, but the fact that they are 6-0 and everything looks like, this is the Rays team that we have seen in the past. The offense was the question mark in the wild card this year, and they've scored the most runs in the league through 6 games, and I really do like the lineup, but I think that I doubted it a little bit too much because I didn't understand the impact of a fully healthy Wander Franco, because you've got these guys at the top of the order, Randy Arozarena, Wander Franco, Yandy Diaz, Brandon Lau, Isaac Paredes, and then you probably add in a breakout guy because the Rays seem to have one every year. Right now it seems like it might be Jose Siri in the outfield. Like that is 6 guys in the lineup that you feel really good about, and they get home runs from other spots in the lineup. They've gotten production from a lot of other people as well, and Wander, I know that we like to say, he could be so great. He might be already one of the best shortstops in the league, and if he stays healthy, I really do think the lineup is a lot better than the team that we saw in the wild card last year.
I do agree with you, and their offense is playing well, and it's their pitching that could be great as well. You saw Jeffrey Springs had that, I think, 6 innings, no hits performance. McClanahan's looking solid. Eflin was their big free agency signing, and then you get Glasnow back into the rotation. at some point, hopefully soon. So there's definitely promising signs throughout that team, both on the offensive side and defensive side. I think Jeffrey Springs can be a big kind of breakout candidate in the rotation. Maybe that's lumped in with a little bit of an overreaction after one start. But he's got good stuff. I like what I've seen from him. So if they can get production from him, McClanahan could be even similar to what he was last year. And then Glasnow could come out and play well after his injury. I think his last couple starts of last season, he only had like roughly 5, but I think his last 2 or 3 were pretty good starts. So if he comes out and kind of is an above average starter, there's 3 right there with potentially for more in the back half with Rasmussen, Eflin, who can perform higher. We've seen it before, and especially at the back end of rotation, you don't need him to be a 1 or a 2. So there's a lot of chances for this team to kind of have players that carry the load at different times. And I know it's kind of under the radar. Their names don't stand out to you when looking at their lineup, other than maybe Arozarena now. He's kind of turned himself into an international superstar after the WBC. But there's no like this one big guy who's a superstar on their team. And I think that's kind of almost what helps them a little bit. They have a lot of guys who are really good and kind of sneakily really good. And unless you're paying close attention to them, you might not realize it, and you might wonder why they win a lot of games. So, like I said, they're going to be right in that conversation for a playoff spot is kind of where I'm getting at. And I just think the star power of the Blue Jays and Yankees at the top, if both those teams stay healthy, I think they're still better than the Rays.
You know, maybe we lump this in as a potential overreaction to Judge, but I think we're going to be looking at this in a month or two, and I think we're going to see that Wander Franco is that superstar that, you know, everyone thought he was going to be when he was the top prospect in baseball, and I think it was 18 years old. Like, I really do think that if he stays on the field, which, you know, he has so far this season, we're going to recognize him as that kind of superstar, at least by the midway point of the season, by season's end. I do think we're going to recognize him as, yeah, no, this is in competition for maybe the best shortstop in the league.
I think that's in a little bit of an overreaction. It depends on how loosely you want to say in competition. I would say there's probably about 5. I'd say, if I'm not forgetting anyone, 5 like elite shortstops. I would say Wander's just on like kind of the cusp of that. So I think he can enter that conversation where he could be among the top 5 shortstops of baseball. But to say he's the best, I think need to see a little bit more. And it's kind of feels like a cop-out answer a little bit, because he is so talented and he's fun to watch. And so I think he will be that superstar. But when I think of superstar, I think of like the big time names who have kind of provided it year in, year out. And I don't know if he's there yet for the Rays. He's kind of well on his way. But I think for the Rays, they don't really have that household name just yet. But he's obviously their biggest candidate to become it.
Yeah, I think they'll succeed either way. I think they're an above 500 team. I believe I predicted them to be above 500. It was just about whether they could beat out some of these other teams for the playoffs. And for me, it came down to them and the Guardians for that last wild card spot. And I mean, we saw the Guardians sweep them in a 2-game series, well, a 3-game series last year in the wild card. So I didn't have the balls to put the Rays back in the playoffs, but I do regret it a little bit. I think that they are on their way to proving you and I wrong. And so I would say not an overreaction to this.
Thank you all so much for watching this video. If you like what you saw, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and as well as hit that notification bell. If you want to see more content from our show, check any of the videos around me or follow our socials for more content from Double Play.